audience.
Yeah.
July.
Are you in the town?
Great. Yellow up here. What do you got? And also.
The thing is, we yeah, we did. So we only have to, down the floor is Jersey.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designated time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using electronic amplifying and recording device in order to obtain a clear and audible record, and we request all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly to the microphone. The recording device will be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meeting. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Mr. Hutchison.
Present.
Mr. Owens.
Present.
Mrs. Stubbs. Present. Mrs. Winners. Here. Mr. Mignon.
Here.
Mrs. Strato.
She's away and excused this evening.
Mr. Mercado.
Present.
Mr. Collier.
Here.
Mr. Cardis.
Here.
Mr. Lechner. Deputy Chief Menazzi.
Here.
Mr. Chadwell.
Here.
Before we go to the public portion, I want to make the public aware that there are two add-ons or walk-ons to the agenda. They are Resolution 2007-154. That is adopting a 3-year consortium agreement with the County of Camden. The County of Camden, along with Cherry Hill Township, we entered into a partnership where it provides housing assistance activities. So basically, it provides advice and housing information for those who are struggling with their home and maintaining it. It's called a home program. The second one is a resolution of the council approving the 2024 HUD Consolidated Plan and the fiscal year 2021 one-year action plan. This is for CDBG. Excuse me. Yes. And it talks about funding that we receive. Some of this funding, our allocation for fiscal year is $306,188. Mr. Cars, we use this also for some of our home assistance or mortgage assistance. Also, CDBG funds are also used for other activities. In the past, we provided funding for people to do upkeep to their homes through a program. What else do we provide?
It pays for the senior bus driver.
Okay.
It also, I believe, covers JC Housing.
Okay. So this is a community development block grant through the Housing, Urban, and Community Development Department. So those are two walk-ons. With our public portion, our first public portion is for 15 minutes. Anyone could speak on any agenda item only. Each speaker is entitled to 3 minutes. If you wish to address council a second time, once everyone has spoken, that individual may come back up again. Again, this is a 15-minute public portion, and each speaker is allocated 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak during the first public portion? Yes, sir. Oh, before you speak, those that are speaking on the microphone, please keep your mask up, please. Thank you.
Good evening, council. Jason Stott, 16 Trinity Lane, Blackwood, New Jersey.
Good evening, Jason.
How are you? Actually, I came in for one, but given the agenda, I'd like to address a second, which is the first being the veteran, disabled, or exemption credits. So I am a disabled veteran. DD 214 in hand. I'm still I currently serve in the reserves. Thank you. I appreciate it. However, the last 5 years that I've owned a property, this specific property, 16 Trinity, I have been denied an application for the veterans deduction, with a short explanation of that my home was purchased in just my wife's name due to financial reasons. It benefited us just to leave it in her name. So without my name being on the deed, the Gloucester Township tax assessor has told me 3 specific times over the past 5 years that they cannot issue I believe it's a $500 deduction because I am not on the title or the deed of the house, which the county, the state, and federal governments all, my wife in and of herself, as long as, if we are to even divorce, as long as she does not remarry, she's entitled to those deductions through those other entities. I would ask the council to look into this, and if they would, please get back to me directly. I can leave a phone number, an email, what have you. But this is a deduction that now is 5 years long that I've owned my property. That is $2,500 that I'm entitled to. My family is entitled to. That has been rejected. I have not, and just to be clear, there's not going to be a record of it because I was not given an application based on the information that I've just given all of you. Is that, Mr. Stott, there's no reason for you to put an application in because under your wife's name, your wife is not entitled to those deductions because you are the veteran. You need to be on the title what have you. If the council could please, again, look into this. Again, county, I've already, because this is my first time here speaking to the council, I made a phone call to the county. The county says it's a go for them. The state, I get state and federal tax deductions every year, granted to both myself directly and my wife for us being married. So please, if you would,
Jason,
thank
can
you.
you come up here and give your phone number?
How about I write it down and I can pass a note?
Oh, all right, write it down, pass me a note. All
Okay.
right. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your service at Black and Fire. Is there anyone else? Mr. Polidoro, followed by Mr. Sweet.
Being Council, Ray Polidoro from the Historic Village of Ariel.
Good evening.
Glad to see everybody's here and healthy. On ordinance 2009, I just wonder if we could fill in some details regarding the purpose for this acquisition and what would become of the lien on that property.
So I'm going to start off, and then I'll tag off to our solicitor, Mr. Carlemere. For those who aren't familiar with this property, this is the Glendora Ambulance Squad property. Originally, well, this was a township building many, many years ago, Mr. Carlemere, in the 50s.
That's correct, it's Glendora Rescue.
And then when the Gloucester Township EMS Alliance or EMS was operating, they used that particular facility. They are no longer around, the EMS Alliance. So that particular building, the purchase is $30,000. There is substantial liens on it through the bank, but there is money that is left over from the Gloucester Township EMS Alliance, I believe $37,000. Coupled with that, the bank will write off the lien. That particular building will come back to the township. It is the intent to repurpose that particular building for maybe one of our nonprofit organizations here in the municipality.
When you say nonprofit, can you give me an example of what you're referring to?
A nonprofit organization.
I mean, any specific come to mind? Obviously, you're not talking about the ambulance squad or anything, AM.
No, we repurpose another use.
Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sweet.
We called you Mr. Sweet.
I'm good. You answered everything.
Okay, is there anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the first public portion. Waive the reading, accept the minutes of regular session June 8th, 2020 and June 22nd, 2020.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
second.
Thank you, Mr. Owens on the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes, but I must abstain from June 22nd.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have ordinances and introduction. There's no hearing for it. It's the first reading. There will be a hearing at the second reading of this ordinance. Ordinance 0-20-09, ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property known and designated as tax block 7504, lot 10 on the tax map of the Township of Gloucester and located at 236 Taylor Avenue, and authorizing acquisition by contract negotiation. As stated earlier, this is a former Gloucester Township EMS Alliance building run by, previously owned and serviced by the Glendower Rescue Squad. It's adjacent to the property of Gloucester Township and will repurpose the building for other uses that benefit the residents of the Township of Gloucester. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have a resolutions consent agenda. Any council member that would like to add, remove any items on the consent agenda, please speak up. Hearing none, entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have resolution 2007-154, resolution of the Township Council of Township of Gloucester adopting the 3-year consortium agreement with the County of Camden. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. And resolution 2007-155, resolution of the Council of the Township of Gloucester approving the 2024 HUD Consolidated Plan and the fiscal year 2021 one-year action plan. Entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mignone?
Yes.
Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have 3 GTE Gov Access emails. One is from J.D. Cannon at 338 Crestview Avenue. Blackwood, I'm interested in becoming involved in attending township meetings and possibly joining or engaging with community functions. Reach out to Mr. Cannon via email or give him a call. Next is from Jennifer O'Donnell at 1030 New Brooklyn Road in Erie. Question 1. Does Gloucester Township own the building known as the Erie Ambulance at 1 Woodshire Drive? Yes. Does AMR pay Gloucester Township anything to utilize that building? No. And who pays the utilities? Gloucester Township. AMR has, you see them in parking lots throughout, the township. But no. Okay, next question is from Sam Sweet at 18 Elizabeth Place in Erie. Has the Nike base been sold yet? If so, for how much and when? No, it has not been sold. There's an agreement of sale, and the buyer has $1 million in an escrow account. Has the closing been scheduled? No, it has not. If not, and Gloucester Township still owns it, which we do, why is there advertising on it for new homes? They have $1 million in escrow, so they can advertise. I don't believe it's doing any harm at that point. Mr. Carter, you want to add anything to that?
No, you
Mr.
explained it.
Cardamere?
No, township's holding that as well.
Okay. Now we'll open up the second public portion. This is for any item that the public chooses to address council. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes. There's a maximum time of 30 minutes for the second public portion. Anyone wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Stott.
Council, you just addressed the purchase of the EMS. I understand that EMS building on Taylor. I'd like to clarify an answer or get question the answer that you gave for the current EMS building that AMR is utilizing, that the township owns, does not pay any rent. Why is that?
Mr. Cardis?
The reason being is that when the GT EMS folded up, we were left with determining who was going to fill that missing gap. And so there was a secondary bid at the time that we went out and awarded to GT EMS. That was from AMR. At the time that we contacted them, they did not have a location to situate themselves in Gloucester Township. So looking around, knowing that the aerial ambulance building was centralized in the township, we felt that that was a priority to put them in a central area so that they could respond. So we offered them to be able to locate at that building that was vacant at that time. Now, they do have a model that is a little bit different than just responding from that building. I won't say they don't keep ambulances in there, because they do, but their model is to have their crews around town. You probably noticed that they're sitting in parking lots of various pharmacies. They're sitting in other public parking lots. And when they get a call, they respond from that area. They don't like them. They don't want them to come back and just sit around and watch TV or do anything like that.
As a member of the public, I understand the use of the building. However, why is my money paying a corporation, mind you, in case nobody on the board, the council knows, AMR is a nationwide company. It operates in 40 out of the 50 states in this country, as well as conglomerates all over the world. In 2017, AMR was bought for $2.4 billion. Why is Joe taxpayer myself paying for their water, their electric, all the upkeep of that building without any rent? And to go even further, for anybody who is to come out and say, well, they need amenities, they need a place to rest their head, where they work 12-hour shifts, what have you, understood. I'm in the business myself. I'm in the business myself. As a taxpayer, if they're in their vehicles at a Wawa, at a grocery store, wherever getting gas, they can respond in a moment's notice from their vehicles. It's not my responsibility as a taxpayer to pay for their amenities. It's not a contracted item. You haven't mentioned it's a contracted item for the township to provide them with these amenities. It's their employer, that $2.4 billion entity, to pay for their employees' amenities. They're contracted to provide a service. I don't have any gripes about the service that is provided. However, I do have a problem with amenities that are provided at my expense with no cost being even shared. We're giving it to them. We're giving them a building for nothing. We're giving them those amenities for nothing. Why is that?
Is it time to take a look at that agreement that we have?
Look, we can revisit it, but I will tell you, at the time that GT EMS folded, we were very close to not having ambulance service in the town. It was a very desperate time, and we made a lot of moves to try to get a replacement. And AMR did not have to honor the bid that they had previously submitted. So we were very close to not having an ambulance at all.
How long ago was that?
Tom, let's just take a look at it again.
Yeah, we can look at it.
Okay.
Thank
you, Jason. Appreciate it. Mr. Engel in the back.
Robert Engel, 2319 Garwood Road. And thanks to Mr. Qualamere, the aerial building was transferred to the township legally and purposely. But one of the things that the mayor tried to assure us that the legacy of the building would continue. Therefore, there is an EMS truck running out of there. So I'm partially to blame for that, Jason, because that was an agreement that the mayor had reached with us, that they would try to continue to use that building for that purpose. Just so you're aware. So you can blame that one on me. And Dave, thanks for all your help in that. The only thing I ask, as I asked with the aerial building, is the volunteers did the job in this town for many, many years. Most of them are now gone. The only thing that they had tangible in town was their buildings. And when the township restored the aerial building, they were kind enough to agree to, if EMS continued, to allow them to work out of there and pay homage to Ariel by putting the name on the building. Glendora, which started many moons ago, should get that same degree of honor. I understand the township wants to use that building for other purposes, and there are many organizations in this town that would probably love to have that building once we clean up the nasty basement part. I would just ask, if possible, that if the township rehabs it the way they did Ariel's building, which, you got to give Bobby and his crew props for, because the building looks like it did when we finished it as volunteers, that it remained, some sort of homage remains to Glendora's membership. Whether they could just put a plaque on the building or something to indicate, the number of years that those members serviced that building and sold hoagies to keep that building alive. I recently attended a luncheon of retired officers in Florida. At that luncheon were 2 members of Glendora Rescue Squad, former Councilman Dave Humes and Rich Brisbane. Those 2 individuals probably put in more hours in that building than some of the people were alive. And we referred to it not as the squad, as the building. We had parties there, we had family gatherings there, and it's important, and I know the Historical Society would probably kick my butt for this. This is part of the fabric of Gloucester Township. These volunteers held up what we now pay a lot of money to have in this town. And that was to provide EMS services to the residents of Gloucester Township for free. Thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. Now, everybody thanks you for your service. Nobody thanked them for their service back then when those buildings were built. And they were built 58, Dave, I think is about right, that building, yeah. That's why it was called Glendora Rescue Squad, because they had a rescue truck. You firemen think you've got something new. All right? They had a rescue vehicle, and it was one of the few in the state of New Jersey that had a rescue vehicle. And I would just like to see the township, perhaps when we transfer it to whoever, maintains some sort of dedication to the members the way Dave and I agreed for Ariel.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Thank you for your comments. And I'm sure we can work something out at the building there. Mr. Polidoro.
Good evening again, Councilor Ray Polidoro from Ariel.
Good evening again.
Just a couple questions were triggered, and maybe Mr. Engels will be kind enough to follow up on these questions if council doesn't know. If memory serves me right, back at the GT EMS Alliance, when someone in that portion of town or whoever was requiring their services was needed transport and rescue from the Gloucester Township Alliance, it was my understanding back in the day that they would bill the insurance company. The insurance company therefore would make whatever payment. The balance would be sent, the bill would be sent to the resident. And also my understanding was if the resident was unable to pay, so that the GT Alliance would basically have enough in their funds that they could write that off. There was not a forced billing. They were not being sent to collections. Being that AMR is existing on the taxpayer's expense for their building and other such, would you know if that is courtesy that is also extended by them, being that they're getting quite a concession from the township, that the township may look into something like that, whereas if somebody can't pay, that if they've got enough in their funds or savings at the benefit of the taxpayers, if that's something they would also be willing to do. And again, maybe Mr. Engels would be best to respond to that if council does not know.
Ray, I wouldn't know that if AMR practices that. I would have to defer to the business administrator.
Yeah, I don't believe they do. I believe the agreement with GTEMS was more of a handshake and a verbal agreement. My understanding, Mr. Quadlemere can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is illegal to put that type of language in a contract. And I believe it's because of using federal money through Medicare and the way it's built. You're not allowed to have a clause in there that the residual balances will be written on. Am I correct?
That's correct. They're obligated to bill and then to rebuild and chase those dollars.
Correct.
And that's what made the GT Alliance that much great of an entity and benefit that we had in the township for the service they provide, and did not force that down.
Unfortunate that they folded.
It is, but tradition, maybe we can find out that we also didn't give them really anything for free.
We do make requests for individuals, and we do
It would be
contact them.
nice. If you want to carry on a tradition, that would be a great one
I
to
believe
carry.
they have waived some fees, but they haven't, it's not a consistent policy.
Gotcha.
If my memory serves me though, the GTEMS Alliance was in that railroad building. They were not paying the utility side.
No.
Okay, and I guess I ask this question every couple of years, and being we're talking about first response service, does anyone on council, and I'll ask those that are in the medical profession to exclude themselves from this question to see what those not in that industry know of what the difference, what the great difference is between the EMT services and paramedics in a cardiac emergency?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay. For the benefit, and unfortunately I have the experience of this, of losing my dad to this, is that when EMTs do respond and police respond, defibrillation and compressions are a great benefit. The great difference of having paramedic service from one end of the town to the other is to be able to intubate and keep the airway clear so that when the compression is being done, someone that's suffering that heart attack does not aspirate and we lose them. And that is how I lost my dad. In asking that question, to as many years as I can remember, the only paramedic service that we ever had came out of Choose Landing. At the time was provided by a hospital, but also housed there. Do you know what we have in the southern end? If somebody were to have a cardiac emergency in the southern end, what the response time would be either from Glendora or Choose Landing or any mutual aid? What the response time would be in a cardiac emergency in Ariel?
Wouldn't be very good. I do not know what the response time. Do you know the response time?
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I know that it took EMTs 22 minutes to get to my dad's Winslow house on Sicklerville Road, and he didn't stand a chance. But he also aspirated. We did not have paramedic service at the time. Moving over here from Philly, you know, Philadelphia's a major city, high taxes and what have you. Not that much different than here, but you were always 3 minutes for a paramedic in a firehouse in Philadelphia. We're a big enough town, certainly a growing town and enough populace that that'd be something to continue to look into, that we've got that paramedic coverage to assist EMTs and our police and fire. It's definitely worthwhile, especially in a cardiac emergency.
I think those county has those records, and that AMR should be able to be accountable for their response to those situations.
And again, the difference between EMT and paramedic and that intubate situation, which is a life-saving measure.
I
Thank
believe
you.
it's also they can administer medications also.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Ray. Is there anyone else? Mr. Krug.
Evening, Council.
Good evening.
Paul Krug, Blackwood. Since the agenda was pretty straightforward and a little bit light, I went back into my notes and took a look at some things that I had looked at in the past, and what came up was the budget. As you know, I had put together a review, probably something close to a cost review, but I decided to support Pete and Sam in their citizens budget because I thought they structured the data much better than I did. But I went back and took a look, and I just wanted to hopefully get a few answers to a couple of things. I think we need to be really cognizant of expense creep when we're reviewing the budgets. And Sam and Pete did not take into consideration salaries and wages due to the fact that they didn't think it was their responsibility and would show a little bit of ill will to do so. And I believe that too. I mean, you know, the evaluations of someone's qualifications and their duties, but looking at some of these numbers, which rec indoor center supervisor salary and wages has increased 40% since 2015. Streets salary and wages, 33%. Police admin salary and wages, 55%. Mayor's office salary and wages, 30% since 2015, 5.2% in between 2019 and 2020. Now, I mean, those numbers seem high to me, being in private industry. I don't know anyone who isn't categorized as exceptional in private industry that is receiving those type of increases over a 5-year period.
I would suggest that that's not just increases, that's adding additional personnel, definitely in public works. I know in the mayor's office, they added personnel. So I would factor that into your research and your analysis.
Okay. I mean, these are fairly large numbers, and I'm just wondering how we qualify them and how we ensure efficiency among these divisions to ensure that the citizens for, let's say, rec indoor supervisor, are we getting 40% better efficiency or better qualifications or better production out of that individual or individuals? How are we evaluating that? Because it's a very large number.
Again, maybe additional staffing, I don't know without analyzing it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Can I add to that? Anyone who's ever been, I'm sure you've been there, Paul, maybe Sam has with his kids involved in sports. The recreation department is not a Monday through Thursday operation. This is an operation that runs 7 days a week. And there are many sports organizations and clubs that participate in there. And there has to be staff available for certain things to supervise and other things that take place in that particular building. So it's a very active building throughout the entire year. So
Understood, and I appreciate that. And if there's a way we're evaluating that we're getting 40%, more production efficiency or better interaction with young children or the community out of that rec facility, of course it's warranted, but I want to make sure when the subcommittee is put together or when the collective bargaining agreement is done, we have a way of quantifying and qualifying these things because they are quite large numbers. That's my end point. I'm not in a position to determine what someone should be waged. And so I don't want to overspeak, but I just think it's important that we do have oversight of that. In addition, I just had a couple of questions with regard to some other expenses. I was hoping the chief was here tonight, but there was a $200,000 increase in police uniform appropriations. In 2019, $310,000 was appropriated. $298,000 was spent. And then for 2020, $500,000 is appropriated. That's $500,000 in uniforms. Now, I'm a big proponent of dressing well and looking sharp, and I think that our men and women who are interacting with the community need to do so, but $200,000 more when we didn't even spend what was budgeted the previous year seems a bit aggressive.
that was part of a contract agreement that was ratified with our police officers the agreement was struck the day after the primary last year, that's what I recall. and then ratify later on that year. But that was part of their contractual agreement, additional monies for uniforms. Is that correct, Mr. Cardis?
That is absolutely correct. And the numbers you're reciting as far as expenses, they could have been higher because some of those bills could have been submitted in the following year, in which case they're charged against the reserves.
Okay, so the 298,000
Could have been
that's
more.
documented here, it could have
They
been,
are permitted to submit their bills through January, February, and March, which is the reserve period.
okay.
And just to add,
Understood.
refresh my memory, those increases were 2 or less, the 3-year agreement for our police staff. The increase that they had.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
No 5.2s, no 4s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2, I forget, I think it was 2%.
Yes. So.
For something like the uniform,
2.5.
for something like the uniform, does that go out to competitive bid? Is there a way that we could maybe drive down the cost? I don't know how many uniform manufacturers they are for
No,
something like this, but
it's on a reimbursement. We do not have a single vendor that we use. No.
all right. Also noticed that streets overtime for snow removal last year appropriated 75,000, 36,000 was spent, and yet the appropriation went up by $25,000 to $100,000 this year. Now, I believe January, February, March of this year are included, and we didn't have very much snow whatsoever. So are we expecting that November, December, which have been warming more, in my opinion, that we're going to have the expense of $25,000 more this is for OT snow removal. That's apart from the $200,000 that's been budgeted.
I don't know whether it's going to snow in December, I can't tell you. Has it in the past?
Well, what went into the decision-making of adding an additional $25,000 when we spent half of the appropriated amount in 2019?
I don't recall.
One that stood out to me, I don't know what this has to do with, but under streets, Comcast cable in 2015 was $2,100. This year we're appropriating $15,000. That's an 85% increase in the expense. Now I know Comcast gouges us all, don't get me wrong. I feel the same pain, but that's a pretty large increase.
Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is tied into the tracking systems on the vehicles. We had to bring that up to date. The system was not working properly, and so that's tied in through the internet, I believe.
Can you verify that for us? Yeah. We'll get back to this.
I'm going to be cognizant of my time here. All I'd like to say really is we need to be cognizant, I think, of the expense creep in some of these and just make sure that we're qualifying that these fairly substantial increases, we're getting the productivity, the efficiencies, the services that would be expected with the type of increases. And if we can approach it with a methodology, I think that would really be best. And I appreciate if you would take that into consideration.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Sweet.
Good evening, Council. Sam Sweet from 18 Elizabeth Place in Ariel.
Sam, is that Yosemite?
Yosemite Sam.
All
Oh,
right.
that's what it is. I was trying to figure it out way back there and I couldn't see it. Okay.
Yosemite Sam.
All right.
I have the whole Looney Tunes.
Nice man.
What's happened to the capital budget? I know that on the actual budget that was released, they said that I think you were looking at borrowing $4 million. I might be off on the number, but it hasn't been released yet. What's the status on that?
Mr. Cardis?
We have not worked on it yet. We have not completed it yet. It's, if and when we do, it's only going to be the actual essential things that we have to purchase.
Do we have any timetable on that or not?
Not right now, no, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Mercado, as you like to point out, don't believe everything you read on the internet. somebody said they called into Gabby Mosquera, or the mayor's office talked to Gabby, and Gabby said that there was another tax increase coming in November. So, because of, again, I'm just reporting back, okay? I'm not saying this is, fact. But according to the internet, Facebook and at different sites, they said that Gabby said because of low revenue, because of COVID, there's going to be a tax increase come November.
Not from us.
Just following up with that.
I'll follow up with the assemblywoman to find out that statement, but
Okay, all right.
not from us.
All right, and my last thing is the video surveillance that you guys so graciously asked to get doesn't exist. Just wanted to let you know that because council gets erased every 2 weeks, and so does, I believe, the cameras that are outside.
Yes, I was made aware of that. Sam, they met. And I know you don't believe that they met, but they met. They met on a Monday at 4:30 on June 1st. They met for 2 hours. They met here in council chambers. I know you don't believe it.
It's not that I don't
But
believe
here's
it.
the thing.
Maybe my definition of a meeting is different than your definition of a meeting, with all due
But-
respect.
There's no story here. They met.
I was here for 2 hours.
Why was,
In that room right there.
okay, so if you guys met on June 1st,
Yes, we did.
why was the council workshop then canceled?
There was nothing on the agenda. We had nothing on the agenda. When the clerk contacts me on a Thursday and tells me, Orlando, I have nothing to put on the agenda, we're not going to hold a meeting. If we have an item, or if we have one item, we'll have the workshop meeting. But there was nothing to put on the agenda that evening.
And the budget couldn't have been put on the agenda to discuss?
We have a subcommittee that was discussing the budget.
I believe the establishment of the date to meet on the 1st came after the council workshop was already canceled.
I don't know about that. I
I
just know that
believe it was.
Thursday, Ms. Powers contacted me and indicated that we didn't have anything on the agenda item. Would I like to have the workshop meeting? You had reached out to me and asked me if it was canceled, and I said it was canceled. We had no items for that day.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Is there anyone else? Before Mr. Stott, anyone else that'd like to speak? Mr. Stott, you're our last speaker.
Capital purchases, that does include property and land, correct?
Right.
Okay, so just seconds ago, you had told Sam Sweet, Mr. Sweet, that only essential items would be purchased, correct?
That is my understanding of the position that the mayor is taking.
Okay. 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, when we started this meeting, did the council not just agree to a $30,000 purchase of a property, land and property, the old GTMS building?
And Mr. Carson will tell you where that money comes
Yeah,
from.
that'll be coming from old capital money. I'm talking about a new capital, and that's what Mr. Sweet was speaking about.
Jason, majority of that capital money goes to street improvements, sidewalk improvements, drainage improvements. That's where our capital projects go to.
And we are talking about a building that right now is currently assessed at $187,000. We're purchasing it for $30,000. Seems like a pretty good deal for the township.
What doesn't sound like a pretty good deal for the township is an almost 10% tax increase to my property taxes. And regardless of whether it's a purchase for $1, $5, $30,000, me as a taxpayer, that aggravates me. It's a non-essential, no matter where the money's coming from, old money, new money, essential items. In today's time, the last 6 months, where people are out of work, don't have money coming in, the state of New Jersey's unemployment and disability systems they don't have answers to. For this council to approve $30,000 may not seem like a lot to you, sir, or the council, or to, albeit a lot of people in this township. For me, an average Joe taxpayer, if it's $5 of non-essential spending, it's a problem. It is a problem. And some things that the council should be thinking about in the big picture. Not what looks good on paper, where this money's come, how we're paying for it, but the big picture. There's not many people. I'm not surprised. There's 15 people here today. But if you do go to the Facebooks and the pages and the Twitters and all that, there's a lot of people in this township that are very upset over the not only the taxes that were just risen, but the things that are being bought and paid for no reason, for nothing. What reason do we have, Mr. Chairman, to purchase that property? You don't have a reason today. You just said specifically that possibly for a nonprofit. There's not a specific need, want, or desire. The only answer that I've gotten is, it's a really good deal.
No, it's an opportunity to repurpose the building that will help serve the residents of our community, Jason.
Understood.
That
But today, in today's time with this COVID and people being out of work and not having their money to pay for repurposing my house or things around my house, that's a problem that the council deems it okay to repurpose a building for something down the road, to spend our taxpayers' money to purchase and do those things. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll close the public portion. Sorry, we made our 30-minute time limit. Polling of directors?
Mr. Brodemere?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Cardis?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lechner?
Nothing to report.
Deputy Chief Menazzi?
Okay.
Mr. Chadwell? Mr. Hutchison?
Thank you very much for coming out this evening during our pandemic. I appreciate all the comments. Very well thought out comments, Paul. Have a good night.
Mr. Owens?
Thanks for coming out tonight. Deputy Chief, thanks for your leadership, the chief's leadership, and all the men and women that serve our township with the police department, and all the first responders out there. Thank you for what you do. Last, don't forget to fill out the census, census.gov. Go online tonight when you get home if you have not done it yet. Tell your neighbors, your friends, your families, so you make sure you get counted for Gloucester Township. Thank you.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Thank you everyone for coming out. Stay safe.
Mrs. Winters?
I want to thank everyone for coming out and their comments, questions, concerns. And just to remind everyone, as I frequently do, please be safe. Please wear your masks. Be careful because a lot of people are coming to New Jersey, with vacation times. So just beware of your surroundings and be safe and protect yourselves.
Mr. Minier?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Be safe and stay cool. Thank you.
Mr. Mercado?
Thank you for coming out. I entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Have a great evening, everyone. Mr. Stock, you provide your phone number?
Sheetrock for.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
appreciate that. Chief, I guess the inspector is still using it.
I'm bringing them up. Also, yeah.